So this session is being recorded. So whether you're joining us live or watching afterwards, you're very welcome. And if you are watching us live, the Vice-Chancellor will be taking questions at the end of the session, and you can ask them through the platform that you're viewing us on, and I will put them to Jenny at the end of the session. So, Vice-Chancellor Jenny, welcome. Wonderful to have this opportunity to introduce you to our global community of alumni. Maybe to start by, if you could tell us a little bit about your life and career before you joined us in Suffolk, and what drew you to your, what's still quite a new role.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, as a teenager, madly passionate, I didn't really want to study medicine, but then slightly lost my way and had a bit too much fun. And then came back, and I was told if I was lucky, I would be a dietitian. Not that there's anything wrong with being a dietitian, but and so I ended up doing A-levels in chemistry, biology, and home economics. And when I was in my chemistry class, there were these boys who were all applying for medicine, and they were answering the questions. I thought, I know the answer to that question. So I then decided to go for my original choice, which was medicine. And I then had to go, I worked part-time in Argos, and I went to the City College and got a physics A-level, and then went off to medical school in London at UCL. And I'd had a brilliant time as a teenager, but I found, actually, if I'm honest, university a bit of a letdown, because in those days, it was very theoretical, very dense, very non-practical for the first couple of years. And then I got onto the wards and clinical and interacting with patients, and then I absolutely took to it like water. And then when you do medicine, there is a huge range of options available to you. I mean, that is one of the positives about it. You can be a researcher, or you can be in a lab, or you can, as I love doing, things with my hands. And so I was a surgeon for many years. And I did a specialty training in something called obstetrics and gynecology, which is delivering babies and then gynecology. So that was my initial career. So at that stage, obstetrics and gynecology was very competitive. And if you wanted, I wanted what's called a teaching hospital job. So that's the job that you have medical students and other trainees, and you needed to do some research to be competitive for those rotations. And so then I did some research into heavy periods for 3 years, and that really set me up for that phase. And in fact, it's funny how things work out, in that I hadn't really thought that I was going to be academic. But then it came to the time when I was going to get a consultant job, and I could have done a straightforward consultant job, or what's called a senior lecturer job, which is an academic training post, because at that stage, Imperial, which we all know now and is very famous, was being formed from the combination of St Mary's, a very historic medical school, Charing Cross and Westminster. And so that was my first break. Number one, that I got that senior lecturer job. And number two, that there was a big job to be done of amalgamating all these old historic medical schools. Of course, each of them thinking that they knew exactly what the right thing to do was, and that and there was all that slight bum fighting over it. And so that's how my academic career began. And then I was at Imperial for the next 18 years, both doing clinical work, more research, more related to education, and getting publications, presentations, and my career developed along those lines.
But you are clearly, so that's quite a journey, but you are clearly drawn to leadership roles. When did that sort of start? When did you start to feel that sort of pull?
I suppose, actually, I was in St John Ambulance Brigade when I was in the sixth form, when I'd sort of realised I was committed. And we used to do competing competitions. And you used to have to rush into a room and there was a fake, broken leg and this and that and the other and deal with it. And nobody wanted to take on the role of the leader. And so in the end, sort of slightly by default, I became the leader of that. And I guess that, if I'm honest with you, that was the first time that I took on a leadership role. And of course, in medicine, you work very much, particularly on the labour ward or in theatre, it is very much teamwork, collaboration, good communication, and also practical things with your hands. And so that just suited me down to the ground.
Interesting. So now you are leading the University of Suffolk.
Yes.
6 months in.
So I did clinical for for very many years. And the amount of clinical work that I did got smaller and smaller. And the amount of board responsibilities and leadership responsibilities around got bigger and bigger. And again, I believe that life is very serendipitous in that Singapore approached Imperial to open a new medical school. And that was the government wanted to pay top dollar and have the best. Imperial was perceived to be one of the best. And I started that project. And then the person who was leading it, in the end, he left. And so even though I had 3 relatively young children and a very busy life, Singapore had paid for this. And although formally I had been doing a lot of it remotely, I then needed to step up and run that project, which was for 6 years, designing and developing the newest medical school in Singapore. So that was really interesting. And then I was also head initially of the medical school at Imperial, and then I took over all the education and sort of faculty matters. And then at that stage, I was never going to get the top job at Imperial. It was told to me in rather unkind terms. Oh, we wouldn't have you, somebody like you, in that role, which I think was very inappropriate.
Yeah.
But sometimes I was really shocked at the time. And then, of course, the man that had said that to me said, "Oh, but of course it will be a fair and open process," which of course it. And so then I think probably because I think that careers don't, it appears from the outside that careers are very smooth, but in fact, that took me, because I'd always imagined that I would stay at Imperial for another 10, 15 years. And I suddenly thought, I can either be second in command, and by that time I'd been second in command to 5 individuals, but I was never going to get the top job. So I decided to leave, and I got my first principal / Vice-Chancellor role at a university in London called St George's.
And there you led a merger, right?
Yes, so St George's was really not in a great state when I first got there. And it's on a massive site with a huge acute trust. And it's classic 1950s, 60s buildings. And it was both a medical school, but also we expanded it a great deal with very good research and also lots of health sciences. But fundamentally, it was being very poorly administered / run. And so I needed to just spend about 4 or 5 years really sorting it out, because people used to say, "Oh, George's, I'm going to merge with it when I fancy it." There's lots of people who are sort of talked down to it. And I thought, no, you're not. I'm going to decide. I'm going to sort this out, and I'm going to decide who we're going to marry. Because we were small, and it was better to merge and be a multi-faculty university. And so we first of all selected a partner, and we went quite far down the road with that, but it was quite clear in the end it wasn't going to work. And so then that took about 1.5 years. And then we set upon a merger with City St George's. That took 2.5 years, and then we merged to become that university. And at that stage, I left and came to Suffolk.
And as you've moved into leadership positions, I'm guessing that you've had to leave your clinical work as a gynaecologist. Do you miss that?
I only left it when I came to this job because it was so easy to do it when I was on the same site. But to be honest with you, I was ready. You know, I wanted different challenges. I wanted new experiences. I wanted different disciplinary areas. And so, yes, I don't miss it, is the truth. I really enjoyed it while I did it. I met some amazing people through it, but it was time.
Okay. So now here at Suffolk, 6 months in, what are your first impressions of the university, and how are you enjoying it?
It's great. I think it's, first of all, so beautiful, and that does make a difference to me. I love aesthetics and beautiful views, and so I think the location is great. I think people have been very friendly towards me, and I've really enjoyed the greater disciplinary mix, away from science, away from health. It's been wonderful.
And it's from what you've mentioned, I think gender equality has been very important to you throughout your career, and you're now part of a largely female leadership team. Does that make a difference? Are you enjoying that aspect of the work? I
am of the view that you need a team with very complementary skills. And it's not about gender. It's getting a circle around you of people that will have different ideas to you, who will challenge you, who will... I know what my strengths are, but I also know what my weaknesses are. And so in the people that I work with and recruit, I try and fill in all those deficits. And that's very important, my deficits, their deficits, because I think that's the best way.
Okay. And have you had much chance to meet Suffolk students while you've been here? And would you say there's a typical Suffolk student?
There's a wide variety of students. There's more mature students. I've really enjoyed working with the student union. That's a typical thing that one does enjoy. And in other scenarios, and also there's postgraduate students, PhD students. So there isn't one typical student, but that is one of the joys of the job. Yeah. And many of those students will perhaps only encounter a Vice-Chancellor at ceremonial occasions or through the SU. Can you tell us a bit more about what the job involves? Is there a typical day? It's hugely varied. I mean, I have a couple of national roles. So if I give you an example today, I'm on the board for UCEA, Universities and Colleges Employment Association. So that's a national role, and I sit on that board, and that's about terms and conditions and about pay. And then I also sit on the board of what's called Universities UK, which is about 140 universities. And it's sort of partly, you get together to support each other, you get to know about the university, you interact with government, you set strategy. And I'm the national finance and regulation lead for that.
Okay, and that puts you in a good position to sort of have an overview of the role of higher education in this country, and many of us have sort of looked with concern at what's happening in the US and the stand that Harvard is taking. How do you see the role of universities here in the UK, particularly the post-92 universities, and might we envisage a situation like what's happening in the US here?
I think the challenges for the UK system are dominantly around lack of resource, about the fall in the number of international students, and how they were used to compensate for research funding and other elements. I don't see the toxicity that's come to academics and students that currently is seen in America. It certainly is the case that academics seem some are having a very difficult time. There's been some very high profile dismissals or removals of places like Harvard and vice-chancellors from there. But also, I believe now at the level of individual students, if they have the wrong views or seem to be, that they also sometimes have their visas rescinded.
Okay, so you're optimistic for universities broadly, but accepting that there are financial challenges.
Yes, I mean, I'm a great believer in it. I came from an incredibly ordinary background. I didn't, I was state educated. I didn't come from wealth. If I look at my own trajectory, it's amazing to me that I, as a very ordinary background, now I'm a professor of medicine and also run a university, and that is because of education.
Yeah. The transformative power of education, which is obviously what the University of Suffolk is all about, avowedly. And perhaps that brings on to another important part of your role, which is fundraising, part of my role too. How is that going here at the University of Suffolk? And what in your view are our priorities for fundraising? Where are the needs?
Well, I think that it's complicated, and people think it's easy, that people are going to be hanging around on the street corner ready to give you loads of money. Absolutely isn't like that. I think that people who are donors, and we have some donors, they want to make sure that you're going to be a good custodian of that money, that the money that they are giving is going to be impactful. A lot of people aren't particularly concerned about their name in association with things, but they definitely are savvy enough to want to make a difference with it. And it is about building up relationships, and I'm very familiar with doing that. When I was in Singapore, there was much more a culture.
Yeah.
You meet people and they almost would say, "You haven't asked me for any money yet." Whereas here it's slightly more box and cox, but it is part of my job, and I'm an ambassador for the university, so it's an important part of the job, and you do a great job supporting me.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I enjoy it very much, and it's a role that you can. It's very rewarding to see the impact of giving and working with donors. So I enjoy it too. I mean, I know that you have a home in Ipswich, and so you're rooted here as well as having a home in London. What are your first impressions of the county and the university's role in the county and beyond?
Yeah, I think it has a really important place in Suffolk. A university, it should have a university, and the incidental conversations, I do a lot of collaboration with local people, business, the arts and cultural sector. They're very proud of having the university. So, and that's another distinction. One of the reasons I'm enjoying it so much here is in London there are about 58 higher education institutions.
Yeah.
So you're just one of many, and if they don't want to do anything with you, they can go somewhere else. Whereas we are in Suffolk for Suffolk. We also have the interest of lots and lots of partners, and they're both national and international, and that's another bonus of being at the University of Suffolk.
Yeah, and of course, one of the special things about us is that a lot of our students are local. They come and work with us, and then they stay local. They have families, they have lives, and they work locally. What role do you think, how can we help them once they are graduated? Do you think we can help them with their careers, and what role can they play with us supporting their university, do you think?
I think really important roles. Number one, they're role models that they have come. Often you don't believe it until you've seen somebody else that you can identify with that has done it. And then also a lot of people, by the time they graduate, say, "Oh, I've just simply had enough." Yeah. But a career is, in fact, often then there's postgraduate study, there's continued professional development, there's also developing the workforce, apprenticeships, and all sorts of things. Some people just do their degree and that's it, but there's quite a lot of else that we can interact and do.
Yeah, and we in fact offer lifelong career guidance, don't we, here at Suffolk, which many of our alumni take up. And it's great to see alumni participating in this week Connection Week and joining in, and that's very positive. as you say, and you can't be what you can't see, and that's an important role for our alumni. Thank you. So just having a look at my. Okay, so incredibly, next year the university will celebrate the 10th anniversary of its independence. We got independence in 2016, although obviously our history goes back way beyond there. What's your vision for difficult question, what's your vision for the university in the next 10 years and beyond, so beyond 2026?
I think to be really important for Suffolk and think beyond the university about all the positive things that we can bring, to continue to work strongly in partnership and collaborate. And there's so much to be done in Ipswich in terms of its development and its, I mean, we really should be able to help renewables energy, for example, related to Sizewell C or wind. We have ports and logistics. We have a good relationship with, the place also relies on good operations from the council with the MP, so it's been part of that ecosystem. And I've been very delighted to be able to work alongside further education, so further education and higher education, so that there's a suite of things, depending on what people want to do, that's available to them, and working together like that's great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Jenny. I mean, that's been really interesting to hear about your journey to Suffolk and beyond, and your vision for the future. I think we'll now hand over to and see if there's any questions from our audience. There's one that's been waiting for a while, so I'll start with that one. Is there anything about you that our alumni might not know, and have you been able to bring that into the role as Vice-Chancellor?
I mean, I just love doing things. I'm not terribly good at sitting quietly in a corner and reading. It's not my bag, but I love things like visual art. I'm absolutely passionate about visual art, see 90 to 100 exhibitions a year. I'm a real foodie, I love being active in sports and things like that. So those type of activities. I barely sit still.
We've all noticed that, Jenny. And the university, of course, has an art collection, a modest art collection, which I know you're keen that we display. And so hopefully, maybe next year, as part of our 10th anniversary celebrations, we will be able to make that open to the public, which would be wonderful. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions that we've got. So we'll wrap it up there, unless there's anything that you would like to add, Jenny, as a message to our alumni.
Just thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. I've been made to feel very welcome. I had a variety of options open to me, and I'm so pleased I chose this one.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jenny, and thank you to everyone watching, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.